Hey everybody, thanks for joining us tonight for the July Pinellas Tech Network Meetup, or PTN. The PTN started in 2018 as an in-person knowledge sharing event in Pinellas County, Florida. Pinellas County is located in Tampa Bay, for anybody who doesn't know, and its largest city is St. Pete, which is actually a great town. When we started the PTN meetup, we strived to provide a place for local tech industry folks to hear from Tampa Bay area leaders and network with other tech folks from cities such as Clearwater Beach, Dunedin, and Tarpon Springs. Now that we're a virtual event, our reach has significantly widened. Tonight, we have attendees here from potentially as far as New Zealand. The PTN meetup is sponsored by Geographic Solutions, a company geared towards putting people back to work. We specialize in developing and maintaining online SaaS solutions for the workforce development, economic development, education, corrections, human services, and unemployment insurance industries. We're almost ready to welcome our guests, but one piece of housekeeping. Please ask questions by using the Q&A button in the top right menu. At the end of the presentation, we'll discuss all questions asked. And now, I'd like to introduce Sue Grabowski, CEO of Desidara and a faculty advisor for the University of South Florida Digital Marketing Advisory Program. Sue, welcome to the PTN Meetup, and thank you for joining us tonight.
How about that?
Perfect. All right. Technology has tried to defeat us tonight, but we won. So
we will not. Yes.
Yes.
Thanks for having me, Evan. Thanks for spending time tonight after work to talk about this topic. It is a hot one, and hopefully everyone that joins tonight will leave with some nugget that they can take back to their organization and use ongoing. So let's jump in. I have a very serious issue that I have to confess. I am a horrible gardener. I am a terrible gardener. If you put a plant anywhere near me, you might as well just kiss it goodbye. So outside, I have attempted a few times to stretch out a flower bed or grow some green peppers, and I will get it ready. I will plant the seeds. I will start to tend it, but I'm pretty much thinking, you know, Mother Nature will take care of this. Water, sun, they got it, right? And pretty soon I forget about it, and I come out and either something hasn't grown, or if it's grown a little bit, it's wilted and it's over. And then when I get fresh cut flowers, say I buy a bouquet, you know, I bring it home, I've got the vase, and I just have that packet of powdery stuff, and I think I can just dump that in there and it's gonna work. It's gonna bloom. They put special stuff in there and it's gonna go. And for some reason, I either overwater it, use the wrong temperature, don't really read the instructions and cut off the bottoms or whatever. But inevitably, flowers die in my hands. And I do a disservice to this guy. This is my dad. This is George. And my dad was an amazing gardener. He lived in the city, but he would take a plot of land anywhere he could find it and either throw some vegetables down or some flowers. He always had the most beautiful flowers in the front of our yard. And this is an example of his handiwork at our cottage. We're from Ohio, and we had a cottage at a lake, and he planted 4 bushes, and he had a vision. He was going to have 4 bushes that would grow into OHIO. Now, it took a while. He had to grow them tall enough so he could cut some things out of it, but he also had to teach them how to grow together. And so he had to use a lot of chicken wire and twine to bring ends together to make the O and to join the H. But ultimately, what you see here is they started to grow on their own. And it was amazing because every spring, these things it's a forsythia bush, and it would bloom bright yellow, and it would spell Ohio. And I always thought my dad was just like this, had this great talent for gardening. What I've learned in my mature age now is that it really isn't about his skill. It was about that he had a vision, that he was able to plan out that vision, that he picked the right tools to help him do the job, and ultimately he kept tending it. And I believe that a lot of marketers, I know there's technical people on the phone too, but a lot of marketers, when it comes to employee advocacy and social media, and that's what we're going to keep focused on tonight, but really on this particular topic, we kind of treat it like my way of doing plants, which was we throw some seeds in the ground, and we hope that they're going to grow, and then they kind of fade out, and so we just keep trying some new things and feel pretty much like a failure. Or we buy the latest fangled tools thinking that those are going to be the things that are going to make the difference. So today, in the next 30 minutes, I'm going to try to help you think like George. And we're going to talk about why it's important to have a specification. We're going to talk about some of the tools that are out there, the very narrow differences between them, and why it's important to be very choosy about what you end up going with in terms of a platform. And finally, we're going to give you some tips and some things that I see that I like that might jumpstart your employee advocacy on social media, even as you plan out something that's longer term and has more power to it. So let's dive in. I cannot talk to you about platforms. I know this is a MarTech group, but I can't talk about platforms without talking about the importance of creating a specification. Now, again, my tech friends on the call are going to be pleased because a lot of folks I know in the software space and in other tech programs or tech roles are very focused on the specifications. It's over in the marketing space, which I can actually talk more literal about because that's my space, where we get a little fudgy when it comes to describing what it is that we need and what we're looking for. So if I were to go to the nursery and say, I'm going to give this one more try here, I'm going to put some flowers in my front yard. And I walk in the nursery and I say, I want some flowers for my front yard. I want it to look great. They're either going to blink me, they're going to laugh at me, or they're going to immediately, if they're good in sales, start asking me questions to find out what I really mean by that. How much land do I have? How much space do I have? What kind of terrain am I filling? Rocks, or do I have, actual soil there? Do I want flowers that I have to plant every year, or do I want flowers that come up year after year after year? Do I want the kind of flowers that grow and kind of take over a space, or do I want to keep it contained to individual types of flowers? Not to mention color and all those things. But by narrowing down what it is that will be meaningful and valuable to me, I am then able, they are able to prescribe something that matches that, and I am better prepared to go in knowing what I may be willing to pay for some certain things and what may work to meet my expectations. So what we run the risk of without a spec, kind of four things. There's kind of four dangers that without a spec, we're going to face these things. One is short-sightedness. So without a specification, I am going to run the risk of saying yes to something or implementing something because I see a really important, burgeoning, the short-term need, and I may miss the bigger picture. And as a result of that, my investments may be lost. And those investments are not always money. It's not always what we spend on on a platform, but it could be all about the time that we spent on this thing. Or what if we're hiring people? Those are the resources we're investing in, not new technology. So those two things become a problem. In the marketing space in particular, without a spec, we lose street cred. We lose a lot of street cred because one, we are not bringing clinicality to what it is that we're doing. And it's my experience working with a lot of marketing folks over the years and being one myself, that we will be absolutely jazz hands about a particular idea, bring it to market, right? And then it maybe doesn't take hold and it drops off. And then a little while longer, we introduce something else. And because of that, we don't get a lot of traction, and we may not be getting the respect that we want because we are not thinking thoroughly through what it is that we need. Finally, we face a lot of frustration without a spec. That's going to be your own frustration in your own position, your team's frustration in trying to launch initiatives, and in this case, an important one with employee advocacy. And you're going to frustrate your employees because they're not going to really know what's expected of them. and ultimately right up the food chain to the C-suite to decision makers, because they're not going to see the things that they want take hold. So let's talk about what a specification is, because I got to tell you, it's not a word that's regularly used in marketing spaces. Definitely more in engineering spaces, but not necessarily in marketing spaces. A specification, it is in fact a document. It's a document. And that document is going to contain content that is targeted at objectives. If you have not defined for your own organization the objectives that you need to hit, again, unique to your organization, I'm talking about what do you actually want employees to do to be engaged? What kind of metrics are you trying to achieve? Are you just trying to see an uptick in shares and likes, or are you really trying to bring employees into the social media space, both from a content sharing perspective and a content development perspective? So you need to define objectives, or you will not, it's waste of time to build a spec without objectives, because everything in that document is going to be targeted at objectives. A specification lists the requirements that must be present to meet those objectives. What are my must-haves? What do I absolutely need in order to meet the objective? Those requirements you may not have in hand right now. You may not be able to solve that problem. That's okay. But listing thoroughly what is required in as much detail as you can to meet your objectives, that helps you build a specification. The best specifications reflect organizational input. Why? Well, let's just talk specifically about employee engagement in social media, all right, employee advocacy. If you're going to put together a specification for a program like that, you're going to need to talk to HR. You're going to need to talk to IT, because there's going to be systems involved. You're going to need to talk to finance, because there's going to be an investment or an increase in your budget, probably required. You're going to need to talk to operations, because if you're going to encourage employees to share social media content and build social media content, what if they're doing it during work hours? So there are different things that you have to gather, but by going out and gathering those different functional areas, the requirements of those different functional areas, your specification is going to be tighter, and it's going to be more inclusive and more thorough in the end. And we'll lead to where your specification goes here in a minute. The specification provides the framework for you to produce a request for proposal, to build a job description for people, to build a statement of work. The specification is not the statement of work. The specification is not the request for proposal. The specification equips you to go out with a request for proposal to a variety of resources, internally and externally. And they may come at what you need to meet your requirements. They may come at it with very different angles. But the one thing you can be assured is whatever they turn in, as far as a proposal goes, it needs to meet your requirements. It allows you to have a much better apples to apples comparison on what it is that you're investing in. And that could be people, that could be third parties, that could be platforms. But it is absolutely critical for you to build a specification around employee advocacy and social media. With a specification, one thing you're going to gain is the ability to better balance what you're going to invest with the value you're going to receive. That's the two sides of that scale. So you're going to be able to say, okay, I've got on the value side, they've got everything I want, but on the investment side, I don't have as much to spend. What am I willing to remove from my value bank and still be happy with the investment that I have? You can't do that if all you're doing is being bedazzled by platform software that has some cool features. In this case, you're going to be able to measure that and really exchange value for investment and better understand what you're getting for that investment. You're going to build camaraderie. So you remember you're going out and getting all those requirements from all those different functional areas? When you bring back to the table your final plan of attack, here's what we're going to do, here's the tools, here are the tools we're going to use, here are the resources we have. The people that you talked to originally are going to see their thoughts reflected in your plan. That builds unity. And I can't think of a better way to launch an employee advocacy campaign or program than to have many functions within the organization already on the same page just by working together on the specification. And finally, you're going to look really, really smart. You're going to look smart because you took the time to think through what the requirements were. You're going to be able to show how you matched the solution with your requirements. And I recommend specifications for every campaign, for every platform that you're investigating. I currently have a client right now that is looking at an internal communication platform with its employees, about 5,000 employees. And I'm not running this program, okay? I'm just kind of a participant on a committee as an outside vendor. They are evaluating 22 different platforms with no specification. It's going to be a waste of time. It's going to be a waste of energy, in my opinion. And whereas if we had a specification, we could easily knock probably more than half of those right off the list because they aren't going to meet the requirements. So I just encourage you to think about that. And as we go into this next section on platforms, keep this in mind throughout everything that we're doing. Okay, so on to tools. Remember that they're tools, they're not saviors. So when George was out, pulling weeds or trimming his hedges with one of those hedge clippers, those were helping to not only help his vision come to fruition, it was making it more conducive for the plants to grow the way he wanted to. But he could have used a variety of tools to do the same thing, and those tools were not at the root of the success of what he had. They contributed to the success of what he envisioned. So remember that. Before we get into external platforms, when you're talking about social media advocacy with your employees, you really need to have some internal tools in place. And some of you have these but have never visited them. Some of you don't have them enough at all. And some of you have definitely not communicated them to your team at large. So you need to have social media policies for employees that are clearly written and clearly communicated. Most of the social media policies that I see are a bunch of legalese, and most people would just agree to them because they need to agree to them. If you actually want an advocacy program that works, you're going to need to make sure that employees understand what's expected of them, the risks that are inherent in what they're going to do, and the consequences for violating things that are outside of scope. So please make sure you have those. And I recommend another internal tool is having an employee social media champion. Again, this doesn't have to be a new employee. It doesn't have to be a title. This is a role, not a title. So I encourage you to have someone that's actually going to champion this entire effort. It's going to take more than one person to do it, but just having somebody that is aware of all the requirements, aware of the policies, that's going to be helpful. So I went through, and there's tons of tools out there, but I picked some tools just to give you some overview of what's available to you. As I go through these, some of you use these, and so you're either going to say, yes, I love it, or internally you're going, I hate it. It's the worst platform ever. And why you're doing that is my guess. If you love it, whether you did a specification or not, that particular platform meets your requirements, stated or unstated. If you hate it, my guess is you needed something quickly. The features seemed to line up with what you might need. You got it, didn't look far into the future, and as you've rolled it out, it's not been what you wanted because it doesn't meet your requirements. And unfortunately, you may have married the vein, if you know that expression, which is an old gold miner thing where the gold miner would go into a cave and would keep digging and digging and digging with nothing, but they're like, no, it has to be there. It has to work. So just know that, again, none of these are going to be universal. Your situation in your organization, your employee base, your culture, your objectives are different, than the digital square that's next to you in this current meeting. Okay, so let's just take a look at some of these. For small to mid-sized companies, these are kind of the 5 or so that I think are worth taking a look at, but there's a lot more out there. So let me show you though how they market themselves, because you're going to see something emerge and why my specification intro is so important. A crowd fire's on there too, I'm sorry. I'll go back just so you guys can see this, and I'll leave it on here for just a second. So these are ones that I've looked at. I have clients that use them, and because I am agnostic related to whether or not these are great or awful, I'm just going to show you a little bit about how they market themselves and what they emphasize as their strengths. So Hootsuite doesn't have a lot on its homepage in terms of verbiage, but I took a screen capture to show you kind of what their features are that they promote, publishing, engaging, monitoring, advertising, and analyzing. I also pulled one little piece of information that they seem to emphasize more than others, which is do more on social in less time. So the time savings and the convenience of Hootsuite, and again, Hootsuite is a platform, and all of these are platforms on which you can schedule and share content across multiple social media platforms. You can bring other employees to the table as both contributors and as sharers, but each of them have slightly different features as you go through it. So again, Hootsuite is really focused on time savings. Buffer is really emphasizing simplicity. So simpler social media tools for authentic engagement. And let me just pause right now and say I hate those last 2 words with all my being, because one, authentic, we're talking about social media. Nothing's authentic in social media. It's all synthetic. It's across a bunch of binary code. I'm just letting you know that if you didn't know that. And the word engagement is so overwrought and underdefined that people really don't know what that means. So I'm even trying to edit myself today out of marketing jargon so that we just talk frankly about what we're trying to get employees to do, which is share content to their circles about your organization, its strengths, benefits, products, services, culture, available job positions, all the things that you want them to crow about. So I have no beef with Buffer. I'm just commenting on their marketing. The second piece is that Buffer is very focused on small businesses, and it really emphasizes that. So Buffer is about being able to publish your content and analyze your campaigns, but it really touts small business as its target market. Sprout Social, which also is the same thing as, I'm losing my train of thought. Bambi. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. I'll think of it in a second. I have too many names going around in my head. So Sprout Social has more than just social media. I mean, Sprout Social has a variety of different elements, but it is talking about an all-in-one social media platform, and it is designed to not just transform, it says, your marketing strategy, but every area of your organization. It does have a pretty heavy internal or employee engagement, and I said the word, didn't I? Employee advocacy element to it. The other thing that Sprout Social really touts is to extract real business value from social. So it's very data driven. All of them have dashboards though. All of them are going to give you different levels of data, but I will tell you that Sprout touts its data as one of its strengths. Agorapulse is another option for small to mid-sized companies. This says take control of your social media, stay organized, save time, and easily manage your social media. So this one hits the time savings and the organization and the ease. You're going to begin to see this almost everywhere. And so it's not super distinctive, but I do have a few clients that use Agorapulse, and its features are a unified social inbox. So you can have multiple people and multiple platforms in there, intuitive publishing, social listening, and insightful analytics. But remember, our previous software we just looked at also touted analytics. And then Mav Social, this just says complete social media management software. And it does specify some types of businesses that it focuses on: franchises, SMB, agencies, and enterprises. I was tracking with them until they got to enterprises. Well, every business is an enterprise, even though, and if they're calling it enterprise, wide, or if it's enterprise size, I don't know. I just think it's not very specific. Mav Socials, a few other features it touts is AI image recognition, Mav Social app, and then a two-step verification, which security appears to be one of Mav Social's angles. So there are organizations that are very much more concerned about security than others. Not that every organization isn't worried about security, but if you are worried about security, this might be one to look at. Crowdfire says social media management simplified. Does that sound familiar? So all of them have some kind of simplistic mean toward it, and Crowdfire is in the same boat. And its additional features are get images based on your favorite topics, use a Chrome extension to share articles, and add your own RSS feed. So these are some of the small business types of platforms. Again, I am agnostic about those and what you might choose, but you can see that unless you have a specification, how do you determine which one of those is best for you? When you have a spec, you can get into the very nitty-gritty with whatever sales representative they give to you. Also, all of them have sample trials, so why not try it? Just on a limited basis to get a sense of, does it meet your requirements before you even talk to the salesperson? So just take your time. Even though you want to make something happen fast, take your time. Enterprise organizations, I'm just going to go through a few. I'll leave this up here for a minute. Many of you know some of these are bigger ones, and some components like Salesforce Social Studio, I'm not going to go through. If you're already a Salesforce user, it has so many different plugins and so many different extensions. It does have a Social Studio, and you might want to look into that. And for some reason, I'm not presenting anymore. Let me try that. Can you still see my presentation? Okay. I just can't see it. So hold on. Okay. So HubSpot, many of you are already on HubSpot, and HubSpot is really not touting specifically its social or employee advocacy, but it talks about really the whole enterprise. And you can see from its infographic here that it's all about employees inside, and then employees going outside, and then getting over to it's all different sizes of organizations. So it's definitely showing inside and outside the organization. And again, it has a lot of extensions, and social falls into its CMS hub, and it can go over to its marketing hub as well. So HubSpot's really popular for enterprises, and I'd be remiss not to include it. Sprinkler is all about unified customer experience management for all customer-facing functions. So again, when you get to the enterprise level, you are talking about systems that are probably not going to be exclusive to social media. It's going to include a lot of different things. And Sprinkler is all about AI, and it extends to sales and engagement and marketing and advertising. They have sales, social engagement solutions, content marketing platforms, and the like in there. And again, any one of these enterprise platforms, if you're in a big enough entity to support it, you're going to want to really have good specifications made, because it's not just going to be about employee advocacy and social. Octopost is very specific regarding its benefits. First of all, it's clearly B2B, and it's about social media management. So that is important. Secondly, it is one of the only platforms that I have been around where it really, really dives into employee advocacy and social media management, even with a quote of when our employee advocates share content through Octopus, it always resonates much further and generates many more engagements than our corporate feed. So that is something that that I really looked into, and I have some clients that are interested in it because I work with a lot of B2B clients, and finding a B2B solution and the employee advocacy end of it has been a challenge. So Octopus might be something you want to look at. So those are just high-level overviews of some platforms. We can talk some more, but again, you can see how it gets very muddy in that space. And if you don't have a specification, all you're going to do is be convinced by whomever has the coolest features rather than the ones that may meet your requirements. And you may not need as many features as they offer you. So I encourage you to test them. I encourage you to try them, to absolutely dive in at a deeper level and make sure you go there with the spec in hand. Okay, the last part of what I want to talk about is just some tips on how to tend your garden when it comes to employee experience and making social media part of your employee experience. I think this is a very valuable community and very valuable audience that you need to tend. And they kind of get left out of your mix because your focus in marketing is always trying to get leads to sales. But what we don't see is the benefit of the people that are right in our own organization. So in every organization, there are three groups of, I've categorized three groups of social media users. This is pretty universal from what my cursory polls have shown. But the first group of people in your organization, these are your employees, you're going to have some power users. These are the folks that are on every social platform. They post almost daily. You see them readily liking things, commenting on things, arguing with people. They know all the latest tricks, trends, filters. They are into it. You will have a group of employees, no matter what size your organization, that are power users in social media. The second group are the group I call the casual users. So these are the folks that are, they have profiles, they are on more than one social platform. They definitely have a LinkedIn profile because somebody in the organization said, you need to have a LinkedIn profile. And so they have that. And they may comment, they may sometimes share, but it's not really often. And it's kind of all over the place. They're not really focused in what they're doing, but they're out there. They're at least on the bleachers, okay? And they're cheering for the team. But they might need a little nudge, and they really don't feel confident in what they're doing. So that's part of what may hinder them from being power users. The last group of people is who I lovingly call the creepers. So these are users or employees that are users of social media who maybe are on one or two platforms. They have a profile. They rarely to never post. They don't like, share, comment, but they do creep around. They're aware of what's going on. They can tell you what your company posted, but they would never share it. So your job, and this probably falls more to the marketers than to the tech people, is to one, take your power users and make them even more powerful, to equip them to go out and do their thing, to move your casual users to maybe more toward power users by giving them what they need to feel more confident about sharing things out and about getting involved. And if you really want to be aspirational, you can try to move your creepers a little bit toward casual users. I mean, if you can get a creeper to share out one post from your company to their circles, you've won. And in each of these cases, these are people, human beings, who have circles that you will never touch without them. So it's really important to know that your employee base has a huge potential influence over for your organization. And if you're not tapping them, you're missing out. So how do we do that? Well, we got to get them involved. First of all, feature them. So to improve employee advocacy in social media, get their faces out there. Now, you're going to get those creepers and those casual users that might be a little resistant. Okay, fine, start with your power users. But the idea is to feature them in the content. We don't really like to say this because none of us want to admit it, but I'm going to tell you something. We all like our names and lights. There's a local community publication that comes out in my area, and in the back, it's kind of like the who attended what event recently. Pictures, it's just pictures and pictures of people, caption. Everybody that I know turns to the back of the book to see who was in the pictures and were they in the pictures. So get them featured in your social media. I also recommend forming an employee social media committee. Now, might feel a little weird for some cultures that we might form a committee outside of marketing or outside of communications or outside of technology to do this. But the idea would be to have cross-functional representation as well as cross usage representation, meaning my 3 groups I just showed you, bringing together a group of people who are from different departments at different levels of social media usage. And you'd want to provide clear directives on the committee's purpose and outcomes. So why are we here? No, they're not usurping anything that happens in marketing. No, you still get to set the strategy and run it. But what this group could do would be, they'd be an excellent content generator for you of ideas and ways to get the culture expressed. So you're not having them define new things about your culture. You're asking them to show you what they want to do, what we could do to better express our current culture. In advance, you're going to need to consider what latitude you're going to grant, because if you're going to do this, you may have to drop a few of your rules, or you may have to just push the envelope a little bit to let them know that they're being heard and to show what they're doing to get them even more excited and to start talking to others around them. Because if they have excitement about it, they're not only going to share on their social circles, they're going to share to their employee circles. And that's really important to draw people in. You need to help them. People don't understand social media sometimes, and nobody likes to feel stupid. So it's easier to just back off and not do it than to ask for help. So how can you help them without making them ask for help? Well, one suggestion would be to offer graphic elements, a free review, and incentives for making an excellent LinkedIn profile. So one of the things that the Society of Human Resources Managers would say is that people check out positions on LinkedIn and then they go to the company. They're not going to the company necessarily to see earth-shattering news about the company. They're looking to see who works there. Imagine having your employees with the most consistent, the most professional, the most unique, whatever your culture is, LinkedIn profiles to be found. Get them consistent, have consistent graphics. It'd be great, but a lot of people just don't know how to do it. So you might have to produce some simple explanatory videos on how to, and also on how and why to share company posts and company information. Part of the problem with employee engagement, yes, I'm using that word, in this whole idea of social media is they really just don't know why should I share that information if it doesn't matter. And also, if your own content is a lot of stock imagery, not a lot of real photos or video, and it kind of feels corporate-y, frankly, I wouldn't want to share it either. So helping them understand what kind of content's good for them to share and why, and equipping them with some help, they may be more eager to share your content. I also recommend you start at the onboarding process. Start by setting expectations right out the gate of what social media plays in terms of a role in their work. We want them to share the following kinds of things. We expect to see them out there liking our posts and commenting. You can't force anybody to do those things, but you certainly can raise it as an expectation, especially to a newcomer who wants to hit all the marks, right? So you can start by helping them share the good news that they've joined the organization. And I'll show you an example here in a minute of one company that's doing that quite well, in my opinion. Finally, ask them, why don't you go out? You all have internal networks, whether it's email at a baseline or you have text, to polls, intranets, groups, internal, group systems that you have. Some of you have programs and employee programs where people can comment and start new surveys. Ask them what they would want to see in social media. But if you ask them, you have to follow through with actually delivering on that. So what should we feature on social media? You might be surprised at the nuggets that you receive and the credit you can give them. So for example, we did this with one of our clients and they asked their employees, it's a manufacturing operation, and one of their plant employees said that it'd be great to highlight one element of their production in their production facility, something that's little known. Well, we were able to grab some phone footage of it and then give that employee the credit for coming up with the idea of sharing it. It was a double win. One, it was great content. Two, it brought together the group that worked in that pod on the manufacturing floor. And then it went out and showed this is the culture that we have. We have a culture where people can give suggestions and leadership follows up on it. So think about it, ask it, it's important. So I want to show you a couple examples of some things that I like and what I see happening. So Progressive Insurance, I am close to because I used to work there 30 years ago. And I had them as a client for a long time, so I do follow them. But what I've begun to see pop up in my newsfeed on LinkedIn, I am not friends with Dorian Alexander. You can see he's a third plus distant connection from me. But he says, I'm very excited to be announcing that I am leaving the body shop side and will be taking my talents to Progressive Insurance. And he gives his own take on it. He was trying, making a little play on he's not LeBron, making the announcement on ESPN. But you can see he's got hashtags and he has the I accepted a job with Progressive. Not so long after that, I saw this one. And this is Mackenzie, also not in there, not a connection of mine. She has her own introduction. She has her own hashtags, same graphic. And on both of these, Progressive commented on their posts, which is why it came up in my feed. Now let's think about this. My guess is that as soon as they got their welcome or you're accepted, they immediately gave them the tools that they needed to promote their acceptance online with very simple steps. Here's the graphic you use. Here's some sample copy. Here's some sample hashtags. And these are two different positions, but I just love that they did that. And then Progressive also incorporates a lot of employees into other just regular posts. So this one is, it says you probably didn't want to grow up working in insurance, but like Progressive employee Femi, the benefits of working in Progressive Insurance might surprise you. And then you can read his story. Real people, real faces. This is bringing a human element. Again, I can't say that it's quote unquote authentic, but it definitely is human. And I think it's valuable. They also have a network of independent agents. And those aren't employees, but they sort of are. They're like dotted line connection to Progressive. Progressive produces content that is easily shareable, from the length of its URLs to its happy graphics, and every one of their posts gets shared. This one 146 times, but mostly shared by independent agents. And so just think about, you have to think about the content you're sharing. We get a little stale in corporate, in my opinion, because there's content that I've seen come out from my clients even where I go, that isn't very fun to share. And it needs to be kind of fun to share. So think about that as you build your content calendars. Southwest Airlines regularly uses employees in all of its campaigns, not just digital, so not just social media, but it definitely uses it, and it's made it part of its whole culture. And it makes it very real when you're using first names. And look, they could be stock images. I don't know, but from what I've heard and what I've researched, they're not. They're actual people. But just think about, you don't have to give them their life story. A single first name, their title, that suffices. It makes it human and it makes it real. So think about, how can I work in employees regularly into everything that we're doing, not just social media. I also want to show you T-Mobile. So I'm a little partial because Mike Sievert, the CEO, graduated from high school with me, so I follow him. But one of the things that T-Mobile does is a lot of the employee focus is done by Mike, not by the company. So one tip I'd give you is there a way to use leadership to bring your people or your employees into different posts and into sharing things? And so it comes from a person about a person to other people rather than from an organization to people. So think about that as a potential angle as well. Sodexo is a food service company. It's huge. You can see up here they have 805,000 followers. But they have some very human posts in what they do. And I've found it to be kind of touching. This is one of those touching posts where one of the workers or a chef sprang into action to save someone's life. And it just was, it made you stop and read it. And it's very human. So they still have very corporate posts as well. But think about those happy stories that don't get enough attention. And you may have more happy stories than you know. And that committee that I mentioned could help bring out some of the just life stories that happen of your employees that would be worth sharing on social. And that will help them want to share more and engage more with you. Marriott also uses a lot of employee photos. Sometimes it doesn't give a full description of who they are, but they use a lot of employee photos in what they do. And so sometimes it's just going out and getting a library of photos of employees so that when you make a post about the company, you can use one, even if they don't want to be identified. But again, it will help to bring employees into the fold and help them want to contribute to what you're doing. I encourage you to build community with this audience, with your employees. They're worth it. They're already captive. You have their attention. Their livelihood is depending upon your organization. You already have an advantage. So why not build it from there? They already represent you. Even if they aren't on social media, they are a representation of your organization. So when you think about building out culture, the importance of them understanding that their own social pages, no matter what platform they pick, are indirectly, even though they may not like to hear this, a reflection of your organization. It may raise the bar on the type of content that they're posting and the types of things that they're doing. They can reinforce all of those messages that you in marketing spend time producing. I understand how hard it is to come up with content. So use your employees to reinforce those messages, and they live it. And hopefully you have a good experience, but they live it. So let them tell it in their own ways and encourage them to do that. They have the insights that you need. They know the little known stories. They know the hidden heroes who volunteer at the homeless shelters on the weekends. They are the ones that can tell you about the groups of employees who band together to help someone in their team, get through a rough time in life. Those are the stories you can tell. And so hearing them and listening to them is going to be really important for you to grow this advocacy. And they're on social media now anyway. So you're always going to hear from the few saying, I don't even have a cell phone. I'm not on social media. I know some of you experience that, but the vast majority of people are on at least one social platform. So you need to begin treating everyone as if they are. If they bow out, okay, keep moving towards your power users and your casual users. Your creepers are going to be the ones that will be resistant, but you do have a strong population that already is ready to move on some of this work. So in closing, I want you to be like George. I want you to build a specification. I want you to identify what you're willing to invest for the value you'll gain. I want you to understand that tools are not your savior and that you need to really, really choose them wisely. That can also mean people. It doesn't just mean platforms. That means the people that you bring into this endeavor with you. And then I need you to commit to tending it. Commit to making employee advocacy in social media, on social media, about social media, part of your overall internal communication strategy and marrying it with your external communication strategies. It's an important part of really marketing in general today. And you need to bring your whole team together, IT, HR, sales, operations, finance, and the C-suite to make it happen. With that, I'm going to end with just talking a second about the USF Digital Marketing Certificate Program. So this program may be a tool, again, a tool for you to use. So the program is on demand and you can learn at your own pace. We have folks in the program that are experienced marketers, younger marketers, people who are not marketers. So it provides a high-level overview of a variety of digital marketing topics, and there is a social media module in it. There's also things like paid search, digital strategy, digital transformation, which is all about bringing teams together internally to make things happen. So it doesn't always just fall to marketing to make digital things happen. It can unite different functional teams. So we encourage you to bring people who don't have a big view of digital marketing to a course like this where they can get their head around the things that you're worried about as a marketer. And that will, again, bring conversations to the table that maybe you weren't expecting. And we have a strange group in right now. I have a lot of IT people, and they're commenting in their assignments that those are things that they hadn't thought about before. And that's exactly what you want as a marketer. Because of tonight's event, thank you, Evan, for hosting and for inviting me. You can use the code SG30 if you want to sign up for the course yourself, and you can get a 30% discount. Or, and I just got allowed to do this, if your company offers tuition reimbursement, you can get full price. If you pay full price tuition, you get a free MacBook or an iPad with the program. It gets delivered to you on that. So that's kind of exciting, and a couple ways to go. If you're interested, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. You can message me, connect with me, message me, or ask Evan for my contact information. I'm happy to talk to you about it. But I really appreciate USF's approach to this, which is very practical digital marketing experience. And it's designed to really equip a variety of levels of folks on a number of topics to propel your organization forward. It's very, very practical. So with that, I will stop sharing and I will be happy to field some questions.
Sue, I just wanted to say that this presentation was awesome and it was everything I knew it was going to be. So despite some technical difficulties out there at the beginning, we made this happen. And I see, let's see here. Okay, so we have one question from somebody who is posting as anonymous. They say they've used Later in the past, but purely for the link in bio feature, as there were a lot of pages, information that needed to be shared with our stakeholders. But they're excited to explore and research the other options they heard about tonight. So that's pretty cool.
Awesome. Good. Yeah.
And yeah, I would say anybody else who wants to throw a question into the Q&A, please go ahead and do that right now. I just kind of jotted down a few questions that I had, and one would be, there's a lot of ways that you can use social media in not great ways, and so I think that a lot of like security departments at companies are they kind of, you have to kind of toe the line between what's secure and what's good for employee advocacy. What are your recommendations for like kind of towing that middle ground with
yeah, one of the things that I think is a problem is when marketing jumps over the security requirements. So they need to go immediately and get what are the security requirements, because That's where the issues come in, I think, is that IT has security protocols in play. Marketing kind of jumps over it, and then it's after the fact that you get into that battle. So one is gather the requirements in advance on what security needs to be in place. And two is there needs to be a rational discussion at the C-suite level between, say, the CIO, the VP or CMO, of marketing, and the CEO to really understand, again, what is our objective as an organization with social media? To ignore it is to be ignorant at this point. And I have clients that still don't let Google in-house. I'm not kidding. So I understand the security issues, especially in organizations where things like HIPAA and other compliance issues come into play. But I think the biggest trouble is that we don't get those requirements up front, and we also don't have the hard discussion between those three parties. What the CEO, the visionary of the company, perhaps operations, the CMO, the head of marketing, and the head of technology, to say what are the guardrails that we can have for this organization and still play. And that needs to happen before any platforms are selected.
That's awesome. And I love the part about starting at the onboarding process. That's something that I'm like, all right, I'm going to tell this to my lead tomorrow, like I'm already got the gears going here, And so what do you recommend for that? Do you think it's as simple as in a PowerPoint or a video during the onboarding, you just kind of lay out a couple of like starter posts that they can use from like day one or week one?
Yes, I think you have a list of things that they already can start. I mean, I love what Progressive's doing with, just making that announcement, and I can tell they equipped them with that. So here's some images you could use to announce your arrival here. Here's a post you can talk about what your new company does, because often it's hard for them to articulate. I kind of know what they do. I don't really know what to do. Well, let me help you. I'm going to give you that, right? And then also in the onboarding process, often they talk about, the company culture, and we have talks about proper dress code. I mean, you get down to that kind of nitty gritty in those, policy binders, but we don't talk about, here are social media handles. Can we, right now, while you're in this training, can you go on your phone and like all of those?
Yeah.
And can we have you change right now? Make sure that by this date, within 5 days, we expect your LinkedIn profile to be changed and reflect your new position. And here's all the tools to do that. We don't think that granularly, I don't think, at the onboarding of the opportunity. They want to make a good mark. So why not pull them in at that point and make them excited about sharing things?
Absolutely. And I just have one more question, and I know we're kind of over time here, so I'll leave it with this, or we can wrap up after this. But an employee social media committee, do you recommend only marketing sales folks, or should this committee be company-wide?
Cross-functional, across every function in the organization. I mean, take it at every level, representation from every level, as well as every level of social media user. So I'd love to have, my creeper, have a creeper or two. If you have all power users, it becomes a power struggle over who's going to have the best idea, right? But if you can temper that with some casual users and some folks that are just dabbling, you're going to get that representation, as well as someone from, I'm just thinking of a manufacturing place, a couple people from the floor, someone from accounting, someone from sales. So you can think in content in terms of your own filters and your own lenses. And I think that can give, talk about power forwarding marketing, is they're going to get a bunch of new content ideas that they didn't have before.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Well, yes, the gears are definitely turning. And also, Amber said no questions, but she just wanted to say thank you for hosting this event. Thank you, Sue, for presenting. And she found it very interesting and highly resourceful.
Awesome. Thanks, Amber.
So, well, I think with that said, we're a couple minutes over. I'm going to go ahead and say, kind of some closing thoughts here. Sue, thank you so much for presenting. I really appreciate it. Pinellas Tech Network is a monthly event, and so please look out on social or Meetup or Eventbrite or wherever you RSVP'd to for this event for our next one. We don't have a topic yet for August, but we are working on that, so please just keep an eye out. My name is Evan Brenner. I work for Geographic Solutions. I'm the digital content coordinator. I sincerely appreciate everybody who attended tonight. And if you have any feedback or questions or anything that you want to follow up with, please just leave that on at the LinkedIn event or on Meetup or through Eventbrite or however you did RSVP. We would love to hear some feedback. So again, I thank you. And with that, I will say have a great night. Thank you for attending.